Hey there YouTube, it's Bobby aka Paginator, and I'm here today to talk about what I've been reading lately. In my last video I asked you guys to pick my next read, and based on the votes, granted there were not tons of votes, but there were enough, the book that got the most amount of votes is Never Contended Things by Sarah Porter. If you take a look at this cover, it looks pretty dang creepy. Well, this book is pretty dang creepy in a good way. In that, like, it's October, I'm in the mood to be completely creeped out by a book kind of way. So this book is about two foster siblings. We have Josh and Ksenia, and Ksenia is sometimes called Kezer, especially by Josh. And these foster siblings have been through a lot together. Josh is 16 and Ksenia is about to turn 18, which, if you don't know, in the foster system, once you're 18, you're out of the system. There are some places that have homes to help teenagers transition out of foster care and into the real world, and some places that just don't, and you're kind of left on your own to figure it out. And Ksenia is really worried about, mostly about being separated from Josh. She looks at him like he's her little brother, which he is because they've been foster siblings for a long time. But Josh looks at Ksenia like he loves her, like Lovey loves her. And we get the idea that Ksenia could possibly be feeling that way about him as well, but doesn't want to let herself because she is older and sees herself in the big sister role. But at any rate, they're very fearful of being separated. Enter some creepy creatures. Josh and Ksenia go to a party with these people that are just different. They're kind of strange, and Josh kind of gets led off into the woods by this guy and girl, and Ksenia thinks, oh, he's just gonna go get a hookup because Josh is known to sleep with boys and girls and whatever. And a boy at the party does kiss her, but she's not really like into him, and so just weird things happen. Well, next thing you know, Josh is completely missing. People think that he's murdered and that she did it. And things get weirder after that. I'm debating how much to tell you. There's like dark fairy kind of situations, other world situations in this book. Josh and Ksenia get drawn into. You know, when you hear classic fairy stories, they tell characters, the human characters, do not eat food from fairies. That idea comes into play here. There's lots of little creepy creatures that are running around, some of which are copies of Josh and Ksenia. There's some violence. There's crazy things in this book. Yeah, it was just kind of weird but creepy, in that I want to read a creepy book way, as I mentioned. So there we go. Never Contended Things by Sarah Porter. Alright, now since I've been in grad school, my reading has slowed way down, but this past week I've been kind of gifted with some time on my own, which has been really lovely, and I've been able to read a lot, especially this weekend that we're just now getting to the end of. I haven't had to travel anywhere, and the last 2 weekends I've had to travel, and the next 2 weekends, and maybe the next 3 weekends I'll have to travel. And yeah, there's a lot of things going on, so I'm really just appreciating this weekend for what it is and the amount of reading that I've been able to do. So I'm going to walk you through some of the books that I've been reading. This is a book for one of my classes. It is Camera Lucida by Roland Barthes, who is a French guy, so it was translated by Richard Howard. Roland Barthes is a literary theorist, but he wrote this book about the theory behind looking at photography, and talked a lot about what makes photos interesting and why we appreciate certain photos more than others, and the subjectivity of looking at photography and everything. And the only reason I'm including this, because it's not my usual young adult fiction kind of thing, is because I have been inspired by this book to take black and white portraits. And I read this book on Thursday evening. It's just a short little one, and I had no school on Friday, so I've been like kind of stewing. I have no one to take pictures of. I really want to take black and white portraits, so I took a couple of myself. I might insert one here just so you can see what I've been messing around with. And I think I'm going to take some of my students. I have a couple of projects in mind that I'd like to do with some portraits of them. I'm gonna have to ponder this situation. I know a couple of my students watch this channel, and if you're one of those kiddos, when it's time for me to take your picture, don't complain, because it's gonna be awesome. Alright, next book. This is a sequel. We have Battlesaurs Clash of Empires. There is a first book in the series, which is Battlesaurs Rampage at Waterloo. And these are by Brian Faulkner, and they're super fun, alternative history, adventure kind of stories. The first one is set during Napoleon's time, and particularly in the area of Waterloo, and how history would have been different had wild Battlesaurs been running around in the forests of Europe, and they could be caught and used as weapons of mass destruction by Napoleon. Kind of crazy, right? In the sequel, we have our main character Willem, who is on the other side. Napoleon wants to get him, and more Battlesaurs ensue. And I don't want to tell you too much about the plot of the sequel because I don't want to accidentally spoil anything. But if you are into alternative history or dinosaurs or just action-packed stories, I would recommend this series. This is just really fun to read. Next, I have a book that I grabbed from our school library, so I'm going to cover up the library sticker on here. This is Lights, Camera, Disaster by Erin Dion. This is about a young woman who has anxiety. She has some other quirk going on, and she loves making movies. She has severe ADHD as well, and she just struggles with a lot of things, particularly reading books and like comprehending what they mean, or math. And so a lot of her struggles are to do with learning, but she also has some struggles to do with dealing with friendships and people in it. There were a couple of things that made me wonder if she is also on the spectrum, maybe perhaps undiagnosed. But I picked this book up in the library just to kind of look at it, and I flipped to the first page, and it was her in the middle of a panic attack, and it so perfectly described what I experienced in a panic attack that I was like, oh man, this might be like me. I don't have ADHD, but kind of. Anyway, this character's kind of like me, I guess is what I'm saying. So we have some similarities, and it just intrigued me enough to read this story, and it ended up being a really fun middle grade story about someone who's just trying to learn how to be them and cope with their own differences and learning disabilities. Next we have Wayward Son by Rainbow Rowell. Okay, so I've got to backtrack here and kind of set this up for you. If you haven't read things by Rainbow Rowell, you should. She wrote a book called Fangirl, which is about a girl who is in her first year of college. She writes fan fiction for a series called Carry On Simon, which is gives me very Harry Potter vibes. It's a magical school, and Simon and Baz are roommates, and they hate each other. So it's kind of like a Harry Draco kind of vibe, but Harry and Draco were never roommates because they were in different houses, but you know what I mean. Magical school hate each other, and there's this evil out there called the Insidious Humdrum, and Simon is the chosen one that has to take on the Humdrum. So after Fangirl, and we were learning all about these characters, Simon and Baz, that were being written about in Fangirl, Rainbow Rowell wrote Carry On, which is Simon and Baz's last year at the magical school and the battle with the Insidious Humdrum, and we find out that these two actually fall in love. This is the sequel, and Simon and Baz come to America. They come with their friend Penelope, Simon's best friend Penelope, and they're going to stop by and see Penelope's boyfriend in Chicago, and they're going to go see Simon's ex-girlfriend Agatha in San Diego. And of course, being Simon, Baz, and Penelope, they get into all kinds of trouble. So it's a super fun adventure. I know some people don't like reading about LGBT characters, so if that's not for you, don't pick up this book. There is not a whole lot about that in terms of like kissing details or anything like that. They do kiss a couple of times, but there's nothing overtly sexualized about their relationship or anything. It's just, it's part of who they are, so it's part of the story. This was really fun to read, and I have to say I love Baz's clothes in this. Like, he's just a snappy dresser. I could tell you more about Simon and Baz individually, but I don't want to, because some of you may not have read this and might be intrigued in reading Carry On or this one as well. Of course, while I was reading this, I was singing in my mind, "Carry on my wayward son," because, you know, "Carry on wayward son," that song just gets stuck in your head the whole time. So yeah, that's what I've been reading lately. I am now starting Vow of Thieves by Marion Pearson. I got to read a little bit of it in an arc, but never did quite get all the way through it, so I picked up a physical copy when I was at my favorite bookstore a few weeks ago, and I've been reading that and getting back into the world of that series, so I can't say too much because it's a sequel, and yeah, but anyway, I'm reading Vow of Thieves. I will have a couple of unboxings coming pretty soon, I hope. I know the Bookish box has been delayed due to their shipping was held back because of a fire in California. Luckily, nothing was damaged. The books are late getting to them. So they were kind enough to let us know about that. Yeah, so yes, I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a wonderful and bookish day. Happy reading. Adios.